Welcome to the Church of Thomas. Servant versus slave. One of the things that is a defining difference between a servant and a slave is born into a situation where they do not belong to themselves. A servant is someone who chooses, either out of necessity or desire, to serve a purpose, a person, a nation, because of a sense of duty, because of payment of a debt. It is not permanent, and it is not something that they grew up with. Jesus was not a slave. He was a servant. Here is Reconciler Gospel of Thomas, verse 13. Jesus asked his students, "Whom do I remind you of? Who do you think I am?" Peter said to him, though he recounted later because of pressure from John, "I see you are a righteous angel." Matthew said, "You are a wise philosopher." Thomas said, "You are my master, and more I am not able to say." Jesus acknowledged their answers. "I am all that you say and more, but I am not your master, but a servant like you will become when you fully know the one. Because you have fully consumed my knowledge, you have become drunk from the bubbling spring which I have shared with you. I share what you can understand at this time." And this is Matthew 11:28 through 30. "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." "Here is my servant, who I have chosen, and the one I love, in whom I delight. And I will put my spirit on him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out, and no one will hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out, till he leads justice to victory. In his name the nations will put their hope." This is what God said about Jesus. A servant, not a slave. Now, the difference between a servant and a slave goes deeper, because not only is a servant there by choice, but if they choose not to serve from some point on, they can choose not to do it. There may be legal ramifications if you were bonded, if there is an agreement, a contract, that you serve for a certain period of time, or if you have broken the covenant of servanthood, like a public official who is supposedly there to serve us, then we can void the contract that we have with them for a certain number of years and shorten it to what they've already served. Impeach them, no vote of no confidence, etc. But there is a different mentality called a slave mentality, which eats at the soul. It is fed with the mother's milk. It is from birth for the rest of their lives, unless they can break the chains. There are slaves that have been freed, that have not had chains on, even though their ancestors had chains on. But because of the mentality of slavehood, it has been passed down as the way that they are. And this is something that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you tell yourself that you were a slave, that people are always going to be out to get you, that you're never going to get justice, that people owe you for what your ancestors went through, then you are living in a slave mentality. Slave mentalities mean that the creativity and innovation in your own soul cannot be expressed except by a very small minority of people. Because when you are a slave, you are not there willingly. When you are willingly doing something, your creativity and innovation is there because you want to be creative and innovative. When you are a slave, the slave mentality predicts and expects that the master, the ruler, the person who owns you will get what you create and innovate. It takes away all personal initiative. When people are taught from childhood on that they are slaves, even if there are no chains anymore, then they will live within that structure called slave mentality. And they will not reach for something higher because there's still the master out there that doesn't even exist anymore. Break the chains. Reach for your creativity and innovation because it is your God-given right to have these talents and to use them. If you use the excuse of something that happened to a distant relative, ancestor, or your people, you are creating your own chains, and you have no one to blame but yourself. It may be difficult at first to start thinking in terms of being a servant or a free person, but unless you do, you cannot become the best that you can be. And God wants you to be the best that you can be. God bless the whole world, no exceptions. Angel Eliza.